Here we are again, Thursday night, and we're off to the races with the cracked out crazy Republicans and a little bit of beer to help wash it down. You look very happy and energetic, David.
I'm happy to be here, Lucas.
Well, good. Me too. Some people may have noticed some subtitling going on. We decided to start playing with that new feature that they just gave us to have titles. So when I first opened this up to meet David here in the studio digitally, I fell out laughing at his very accurate nomenclature. Anyway, how's your week been so far? Exhausting?
You know, this is kind of my Sunday, so I'm kind of like, it's not really Sunday because technically I worked yesterday and then I work tomorrow. But this is like my last day off of the week before I have to start doing stuff. You know, it's been interesting. The ice storm has definitely been entertaining.
Oh yeah, right. That thing. Yeah, how's that going?
Everything is still iced over. I was really surprised we didn't lose power.
What about like total fuck show on the roads?
No, that was awful. That was like literally I've never seen our roads be that iced. Like it was a solid sheet in places of just straight ice and being like, okay, we're going to see how much traction my tires got.
I don't know. I don't miss that. You would think though that Texas, which was all over the news, you would think that they would like invest in some kind of something. I mean, how many years of climate change warning do these people need to just kind of shift gears?
Well, I mean, they just passed they just passed an act in the Texas legislature to penalize green energy and protect natural gas. I should also point out, in case you haven't heard this is some extra bullshit. The Florida state legislature is now proposing a bill to remove all taxes paid for gas stoves, but still require people to pay full tax on electric stoves.
Responding to the non-issue of the gas stove topic. That's awesome. Oh well, I'm I'm a little tired this week. I decided to get my activity together a little bit, and at 8 a.m. Monday and Wednesday mornings, I've gone for an extremely cold 10-minute, 15-minute walk, 17, 18 degree walk. Basically moving my NPR time from throwing the phone on a shelf in the shower to walking and listening. Just a trade-off of time for, better health. But what I'm really kind of getting a kick out of is that walking on the mixed situation of a little bit of snow, sometimes clear, just the way that the sidewalk progresses here, in boots, so I don't bust my ass, the heart rate gets up kind of good, even without a lot of speed, because it's a lot of work, especially in the places where some asshole has completely not touched any of their sidewalks. And you're like switching from almost clear to 3 inches of bullshit and hoping to meet the dog/owner footprints that preceded you. So yeah, and also the other 2 days so far, the other days of the week, I'm doing a little bit of mild weightlifting before I sit down to work in the morning.
Look at you getting healthy.
Trying. I am
for all my bad habits, I actually do get up and exercise. So
well, you also have a job that forces you to be physical, and I don't.
Yeah,
and it's been too long.
Let me tell you something about having a job that forces you to be physical. My feet hurt. My knees hurt. My back hurts.
Yeah, fair enough. Very true. But, it's got a little benefit as opposed to, those of us that are just sit down, sign on, remote Anywho, for those that have never been here, if you somehow wandered in for the first time, I'm Lucas, this is David, and we love our craft beer, and we love our politics, and we love to be smartasses. So we decided we would just broadcast it, and that's what you're witnessing now. A little extended chit-chat at the digital pub table. Rob's here. Hello, Rob, over on the left coast. If you're here, feel free to say hello. And if you come back and watch later, feel free to still comment. There's still, you can still banter around, even if you go through the library of the library of expert discussions that we've had in the past. The first thing we do on our Thursday evening together, do a little happy hour. We do the hot take happy hour with all the little nuggets and tidbits of news from the day. And we've got a little list running today. I'll kick that off with Trump, the always useful idiot. Right before we got going this evening, I saw the headline that Trump is threatening to not endorse the candidate if he is primaried out of eligibility to run. And like Nikki Haley and all these other people are, they're lining up, and now he's going to be a big fucking baby, a punk ass bitch about it, like he always is. And I'm sitting here thinking, actually, that's great. Yeah, do that, please. Kind of like when he, said he was going to tell people not to vote because everything's rigged. Okay, yeah, cool, do that.
I love the newest. It's an unassigned quote, like whoever said it anonymously, but it's now making the circuit, which is that the Republican Party, apparently a lot of people in the machinery have admitted that Trump needs to go, but trying to take him on won't work. So the saying is, we'd like to let nature take its course.
Yes.
And by that we mean he's obviously overweight.
Yep.
The quote is, he eats like a college freshman, and he seems, quote, despite all evidence to the contrary, seems to think exercise is bad for you.
Right. Yeah, I saw all that, and actually, we have a post on the Brewing Controversy page with the story that discussed that, and I think the caption for that post was something like us two GOP, because the headline was like, we're just going to wait for him to die.
I'm kind of, for right now, as awful as Trump is, the one thing that he does is he makes it so that you can't look away from these things that are happening, right?
It is true that we always see all the crazy, like every day, ever since 2016, every day is a new, like, wake up, look through your fingers at the headlines day.
But I mean,
it's a lot of trauma. What I mean, when you think about it, it's fucking torture.
What I mean by that is that before Trump, you could say, well, it's just simply the law of unintended consequences. We didn't mean for minorities to be disproportionately impacted by that law. We didn't mean for LGBTQ plus people to be disproportionately impacted by that law. That wasn't our intention at all.
Yeah.
And now, no, that was your intention. That is what you're after. The dog whistle has gone from the dog whistle to a bullhorn.
Rob's got a great one. He's a political rubberneck on the highway. Him and all the cues, man. It's like a pile up.
Oh, have you heard the newest thing from the nut job caucus?
I mean,
they've invented a new thing, Blue Anon. So apparently now, when Democrats or anyone on the left points out that what they're doing, they're like, oh no, that's just all a conspiracy from Blue Anon.
Right.
Like,
there is no leftist equivalent of the Chans. I got news for you. No. 4chan, 8chan, your mom Chan, doesn't matter. It's all fucking loser incel basement trolls. And
I wish there was just loser incel
crazy
basement
shit
trolls.
that everybody
I wish that
onto.
was the case.
Do what?
I wish it was just loser incel basement trolls. I wish that was the case.
Well, I was generalizing the majority, but I have like a
If Matt Gates would just stay in his
packing
mom's
order.
basement, I think we would all be better off. Also, the high
Fair
school
point.
population of Florida.
Yeah, that's true. They're not all completely inactive. Somehow, even though he has to probably order them online, even Matt Gates gets laid. So
Oh no,
next up is
he
the
doesn't order
Memphis
them online.
PD chief.
He calls up his friend.
Yeah, calls this dealer. And then, Matt's mom is too old for him. Great observation. Because if she were a little younger, it would be on the table for that fucked up bastard. We all know it. So Memphis
No,
PD.
this is not your Pornhub. No,
It'll come. It'll come as no surprise that it took a matter of days before I found everything I needed to firmly put myself in the camp of the Memphis PD chief, CJ Davis, should resign. That's the hot take here. She should fucking get out. Now, initially, I just kind of thought, like, okay, this shit's odd because you got a bunch of black cops immediately dealt with. That's funny. I guess all the power totally down with it because those powers that be are usually white. But why would she be their stooge? I don't like the way things don't match up here. And then, they look at her career and they find out, oh, wait a minute. She was kind of corrupt as fuck when she was in Atlanta. So, she oversaw an aggressive inner city special team called the Red Dogs in Atlanta, which is just like the Scorpion thing. So she has a history of putting together thug ass, unhinged, violent gang members with
because what we really need in policing is more violence. That's what we
right.
always need in policing.
So this is kind of her specialty. She has a history of putting together these kinds of extra ridiculous, totally reckless units. And then apparently she was once fired from the APD because she tried to keep a sexual investigation away from another cop. And somehow she got the civil service board, which is usually a pretty corrupt fucking apparatus anyway, to put her back in, to reinstate her. And then she became assistant chief, and then she left town and got the job in Memphis. So she's an example, even though she's a black woman, that it might have been easy to say, oh, see, black mamas, they got shit figured out. They're going to fix policing. No, she's part of the problem. And part of the problem that she is the fuck everything up, leave town and get another job principle, which is otherwise known as the reason why we want a national fucking registry and standards and practices that are enforced at a federal level.
One of the interesting things that I've been hearing about this since this began was an interesting factoid, which is, so for those who don't know, there's this thing called the Harvard Implicit Bias Test, which is this test that a bunch of Harvard sociologists put together to demonstrate to people whether or not they have an implicit racial bias without them being like, no, I'm actively racist, etc.
Did Chat
And one of the things they found was
test? How did Chat GPT do on that test? Apparently it passes all the others.
I have no idea how Chat GPT. I right now I've been loving how GPT can't seem to answer any sort of hard questions about even historical figures with lots of biographical information for it to draw from.
We should take the Chat GPT Hitler and have it take the racial bias test.
Right.
Anyway, racial bias test, you were saying.
Yeah. So one of the things they found was even with African Americans in positions of authority, specifically where you most often see the implicit bias test is in the medical profession, because they want to make sure that doctors are not being biased against minorities of any kind.
That wing? That wing is for the darkies. We don't go in that wing.
Right. I got to tell you this story. This was hilarious. It was on TikTok the other day. This woman who her doctor diagnosed her with acute appendicitis, and she goes into the ER. He sends her immediately to the ER, and they say, "Oh no, you don't have appendicitis. You have an ovarian cyst. They can be very painful." And she's like, "That would be really amazing if I still had ovaries." And then the doctor proceeded to argue with her about whether or not she still had her ovaries.
What? This is not. This sounds like our cat at the vet and me going, "Are you sure they're gone? Because there's still a lot of sack there." It's not the same kind of conversation.
No.
There's not a maybe or a but.
But one of the things they found was even African American doctors displayed a higher than baseline bias towards other African Americans.
I think I know where you're going with this.
And so one of the things that we like to imagine that making a police force more diverse is the answer. And I want to point out, we have had multiple conversations on the show about how to fix policing. I want to point out that in none of those conversations have we ever said that diversity is the answer.
Yeah.
We have always said it's about training. It's about drawing from the local community, which can mean diversity. It's about, but most importantly, it's about stopping this focus on this warrior, we're at war mentality in modern American policing.
I mean, the only time in Nashville that I ever came close to thinking, "Oh, shit, maybe we need more of those guys," was this one Asian cop. He was still kind of a dick, but he was like the least dick that I had ever encountered in law enforcement in my whole life, and extremely professional while being a dick. And I thought, okay, there's the secret, because otherwise, no, absolutely not. We've seen tons of Latino cops that are fucking pricks, like dangerous, unhinged, abusive, violent.
Well, I mean, look at
plenty of black cops, as mostly exemplified recently by Memphis, but not necessarily limited. I mean, hell, here in Grand Rapids, they just promoted a dude to an assistant chief or deputy chief role, and when you go look at his personal Facebook, there's all sorts of rah, bro, stick it to the libs kind of vibe. He's basically just a black frat boy in uniform.
Well, and I want to point out, one of the ongoing scandals in Los Angeles is the fact that you had the LA Sheriff's Department have two rival gangs in the Sheriff's Department made up of sheriff's deputies. And this is a department that is very diverse. It has black deputies. It has a lot of Latino deputies. It has white deputies, and still we still have this same problem. And part of it isn't that there's something wrong with that. The issue is that it's about training. It's about certification. It's about holding law enforcement to standards. And having those standards be enforced.
Well, and there's a study I haven't gotten to read, so I did not turn it into a post for our page yet, but I heard about it this morning, and now I'm digging in. It's from the Poverty Solutions, University of Michigan, January 19th, pretty recent. I'm going to read it to get all the gist of it, but there are several factors that they've produced the evidence in the study that can help reduce police violence issues. And the one that the right-wing nutters are going to hate the most is better gun control.
Yep.
Statistically, they've demonstrated that. But they also demonstrated a higher volume of officers of color and female officers tends to have a trending decrease in violence. Now, that's not to say that there aren't like here in Grand Rapids, bushy,
we know apparently it works as a stress relief
on.
system for the Laverne Police Department.
Well, there's that. There is the
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Blacked Laverne edition. Yeah. Woo, boy.
Speaking of reducing gun violence.
Hold on, I'm not done with this.
Oh, okay.
You had to bring up this Laverne girl again, so now I had to make a lot of inappropriate jokes. So, you know how, like, the first time you were in school and you spent your whole life with like a regular pencil and a little pencil sharpener, and you knew how that worked. And then you went to shop class and you saw that big flat rectangular pencil and you tried to figure out like how the fuck does anybody ever sharpen that? And then you realize it has to be sharpened with an entirely separate device. But you might have taken the little pencil sharpener and that big ass pencil and gone, huh, no, that doesn't work. That Laverne police. That pencil does not fit in that pencil sharpener. Well, you can make it fit if you try. Come on, man. She weighs like 100 pounds. She's 4 feet tall. She doesn't even have to kneel.
I quit.
I do want to point out that I'm aware that the extremely irritating woke end of my brethren here on the left are really pissed when people make jokes only at the expense of the female officer. Something equality. I don't give a fuck. It's funny.
I mean, there is something to be said for the four guys who spent apparently a noticeable amount of time on the clock not doing policing.
Yes. It's just not surprising when there's basic corruption, but when it turns into where is the video getting published, then it's different.
We're just doing Pornhub shit. Everyone, this is the Pornhub show.
You go where the comedy is. I like that, Rob. Good point. Anyway, let's move on. So,
so speaking of gun control and policing,
yeah, I think aren't you up next? You are up next. There you go.
I wanted to. This has been the strangest thing. So for those of you who don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I got robbed at gunpoint when I was opening up the store. Guy with an AR-15 helped me do my morning safe count a lot faster. And
I see that you're learning to deal with it with humor.
Right. But one of the things that I've continuously gotten since then is all these people coming up to me expecting me to be now pro-gun, or that, maybe I was pro-gun before, but now I'm really pro-gun. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I made this point to a couple of people. I'm like, my father was military, during Vietnam. My grandfather's, my grandfather on my mom's side was, in the Army for many, many, many years. Neither of them would ever own a firearm. Like, a firearm is part of their work, but Dad was always very clear. There will never be a gun in the house, ever, for any reason. And his reasoning, I've carried with me, which is this: he's like, there has to be another way other than killing someone. From his perspective, because he served in the military during Vietnam, and my grandfather, I believe, was still in the Army as a colonel during Vietnam. Neither of them had any interest in killing either A, anyone else, or B, using lethal force or having that be a first option.
Yeah.
And that's the environment I grew up in. And I get all these people trying to say, well, you need to be packing. You need more, I've got a gun here, a gun here, a gun here. I've had other bar owners come to me and be like, yeah, we've got 2 guns behind the bar, and one of us has always, got one, concealed on. I'm like, this is the problem. This is the problem. The problem isn't that the criminal had the gun.
Mm-hmm.
That's a symptom of the problem. The problem is there are just too many fucking guns. There are too many guns. Lauren Boebert, I refuse to pronounce her name properly because she does not deserve that respect. The GOP's
you
resident...
You kind of did, though. You usually say Bobbert, and you said Boebert. You got it backward.
Did
You
I? Oh,
accidentally
fuck it,
did
I
it
don't care.
right.
Anyway, the GOP's resident recovering sex worker got on the floor today.
Hot off of gunsluts.com. It's
Uh,
Lauren. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean that's how she got Ted Cruz to sign on to her campaign. What was involved in convincing him to do so, we will never know. I'm sure paying customers might have some idea, but anyway, back to the
The
point.
opposite of the pencil sharpener analogy. Pencil and 8-inch pipe. You get to figure out who I'm insulting.
But Americans own 46% of all firearms in civilian hands worldwide. And her argument was, well, we need to increase that number. I'm like, no, we don't. The reason we have a problem is because there are too many guns.
Well, there's more than one for every person in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot what the number was,
most
but there's
people who
more
own a
than
gun
one for every person.
normally don't stop at one. They normally buy another one, and then another one, and then and you got to look at them and be like, why do you need 4 guns?
Because they're the DJ Khaled of paranoia.
I mean, and furthermore, I want to make another point. Why do we need to have all these semi-automatic weapons? Right? Why do these need to be available to consumers? If you're just looking, and this is one of the things that I always make a point of.
I mean, it's all compensation.
If you're just looking to defend yourself, a revolver does just fine. A shotgun does just fine. I have no objection to someone being like, I don't feel safe.
Right.
So I own a gun.
Yeah.
Well,
it's also it's a weird combination. It's a safety feeling. It's a paranoia in a lot of cases. And then it's a huge amount of macho compensation.
I don't think it's a safety feeling anymore. I think it's long since stopped being a safety feeling in my experience.
I don't know, man. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've thought about it a few times.
I mean, so have I. But then and again, but I let my brain follow through with the steps, and I'm like,
well, right. I mean,
no, this isn't a good idea.
I figured out for a hell of a lot less money and a hell of a lot less trouble, I could find a hell of a lot of other kinds of weapons to conveniently locate in all the right places. I mean, you remember after January 6th, I drove around for like 6 months with a baseball bat in the back seat. I mean,
but I mean, it is this mentality of, you're right. I need my Barrett. I actually had a clerk at a Walgreens tell me about his Barrett M82. I want to somehow understand how a clerk at Walgreens, who I'm not going to make assumptions about what other sources of income he may have. That's an expensive fucking ass gun.
Mm-hmm.
You spent a significant amount of your income to go buy a 50 cal Barrett.
Dude,
why?
people pay for what they're interested in, man. I mean, look at the vast array of yokels that own seat licenses in NFL.
I want to point out, and because I actually do budget how much I spend on beer in the course of a month, right? I normally, like, I buy good beer, so I normally spend about $40 some odd a week on beer, right? On expensive, yeah, it's only $10,000. On particularly like not busy weeks, I may spend $100 on beer. Or if I find a really good beer that I want to spend like $40 on. Even if I took all my beer money for this year, I would not be able to afford a majority of these of the weapons that these people are buying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that is ridiculous. So it is about the number of guns.
Well, the idea that you would change that. I mean, it's the same as looking at somebody that's been in a car accident and saying, "Well, you're going to buy a Yukon or a Hummer next, right?" Like, Not necessarily, no. Just because I got fucked over once doesn't mean that my principles have changed. And it's such a base level knuckle dragging fucking bullshit thing to propose to you, really. Like, I just don't understand it. But
Oh, by the way,
whatever.
on that note, I just want to do one slight aside.
Oh God.
So, for those of you who haven't been hearing about cars, apparently Tesla has been having a rash of problems where the steering wheel comes the fuck
Oh
off
yeah. Yeah.
during operation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So David's really, really happy anytime
that does.
there's
That, I mean, I'm not happy that people are being endangered.
bad
I
Musk
am
news.
happy that Musk, being the idiot that he
Oh,
is not.
any bad headline at his expense is why we have the boner alert for David. But also, it's a triumph for you in a little bit of our personal debates over the years, because I really tried to give Elon Musk some room for much longer than you did, and eventually I just had to give in to like logic. Tell us about what's
But
going on back home in Nashville, sir.
Jesus, I mean,
Apparently, I only knew the tip of the iceberg. I saw a headline the other day, and I set the article aside to read it. That the state was trying to interfere with the Nashville Metro Council's size to reduce it by half, which is a fundamental concept that I've been like screaming about for probably the better part of 15 years. But you can guarantee if it's coming from the GQP on the Hill, it's total rat shit and completely nefarious. But that's just apparently one of many things going on in Music City.
oh yeah. So, for those of you who don't understand this concept, and I regularly have to explain this concept because growing up in Nashville, I didn't realize that people didn't know this was a thing.
Hmm.
So, Nashville is a metropolitan government. And what that means is we don't have a county government and a city government. We just have one government that's over the city and the county. They're not separate things, it's all just one thing. Why more people don't do this, I don't know.
I
Because
do
to me,
miss it.
this is the most logical thing that you could possibly ever have. Why do I want like another level of government? It's my
I
county,
do miss it.
right? It
That's one thing I will
this
say I miss.
this makes perfect sense to everyone. What is the major difference between the city of Grand Rapids and the county that it sits in? I don't feel like there's enough of a difference for it to have two separate governments.
You are not necessarily incorrect, but there is there would be a much more conservative government.
Well, and I also want to point out,
County government is
yeah,
far more conservative. And it's
as Tennessee
kind of
goes, Tennessee has 90 fucking 7 counties. There is no reason why the town of Clarksville should have a separate government from its county. There is no reason why Franklin should have a separate government from its county. It should all just
95 counties.
what?
You invented 2 extra counties.
Did I? I thought it was 97.
I was like,
95
that doesn't
counties.
sound right. I'm gonna make sure I Google that. I thought it was 96 off the top of my head, so you're not alone. It is
but
true that the argument can be made that the counties to some extent are pretty small, therefore they don't have anything to do with anything that, I mean, even, like, if you take like Rutherford County or Williamson County, like the only real thing they're known for is their main city. And the only thing going on there, which is generous, is their main city.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So I mean, so Nashville has this one metropolitan government. The state set it up in the 70s. Nashville was the first metro. I want to point this out. Nashville was the first metropolitan government in the United States.
It's kind of a cool trivia fact for Nashville to get to have, I think.
Yeah. Since that moment in the 70s when the state set it up, however, the state has apparently basically regretted it for the last 50 years. Because the state suddenly realized that by doing that for a growing city, it kept on creating a power base that they couldn't control.
Yes. And the butthurt has been strong ever since.
It really has been. For Nashvillians, it's been great because it means that we have a responsive government that is able to do things, and we don't have to rely on a sometimes hostile state government to get things done.
As long as those things don't involve anything that has to get 26 votes or more in that gigantic ass fucking
Yeah, the
council.
council's too big,
Um,
but
and the reason it's fair to consider reducing it is because it's not 1950s and 60s anymore. Originally it was designed to make sure that there was diversity and some level of equity. It's not the same anymore, and now they keep redrawing districts that make it not matter. And essentially in Nashville, what they've done, even though it's really a nonpartisan city planning process, but there's still some horse trading. They've gimped certain districts, like the one I used to live in that had the richest and poorest in Nashville on either end of it. An incredibly well-balanced equation if you had the right person in office. They basically clipped all the money out of it. They clipped off the part that went up to the hospital area of West End, and they clipped off the part that went over to Vanderbilt, and they added more of the lower income. I mean, basically, they just fucked the tax power base that particular representative would have to make any argument and get any traction. And if you're going to keep fucking with it like that, then it's a ludicrous argument to tell me that you need 40 fucking council members to have diversity and representation. Like, nah, 20 would be plenty.
Well,
but I'm sure
and
the state has plans to fuck everything up while they do that.
And what Lucas is referring to is that now the state government is trying to go back in and reach down and hose up this independence that the city has had.
And in every way, like you were describing earlier, some tax bullshit and some what else? There was something about
so just to let you know, Rob,
transit wasn't it? They're always fucking with transit. Oh, sports, right? The sports thing.
So just to let you know, Rob, under another proposal by the state, Nashville would lose control over all its sports venues, which means the stadium where the Nashville Soccer Club plays, the arena where the Nashville Predators play, and the stadium where the Tennessee Titans play.
Which some of that is just butthurt about. Some of that's butthurt about the fact that the city dared ask fiscally responsible questions before bending over and lubing up their bungholes for the NFL and building a new stadium.
Yeah,
and the governor had
that's
to look
part
like
of it, but
even more of a jackass than he does when he falls out of bed in the morning, and wait on logic and reason to play out instead of just being a shill. Which brings us around to the other butthurt being the Republican convention, which apparently is behind most of it.
Which is the main thing. So here's what happened. The Republican National Convention approached the Nashville City Council and they said, hey, we'd like to hold the Republican National Convention here. And what the city basically said was this: we've seen what you all do when you all show up to other cities. Namely, when we say you, we mean the orange thing that operates you like that little, like a brain parasite, or that little alien from Men in Black in the man suit. Right? We've seen what happens, and they end up hosed on their costs, right?
Right.
You don't pay for the police, you don't pay for the traffic enforcement. Apparently you all aren't very good guests at hotels. You all create a whole bunch of problems. We're not really sure that we want you here, simply because we feel like at the end of the day, it'll cost us more to have you here than it would for you to be buying hotel rooms or in tourism or in anything else. We're not really sure that's a great idea. Let us think on it. Yeah, we thought on it. We'll get back to you. Don't call us. We'll call you. Was basically the answer that they gave them. And the MAGA GQP dominated Republican Party that controls the state house now wants to punish the city for refusing the Republican National Convention. I want to point out that there is a movement within the MAGA crowd where they seem to have this idea that they can somehow turn Nashville into a conservative city. Ben Shapiro has moved here. Candace Owens has moved here. There's several conservative groups that have moved here. And they think that because there are conservative outlets, yeah.
That's a great point.
Uh,
Andy makes
yes,
a
yes,
great
Andy.
point.
We have too many bachelorette
We've got
parties to
'em,
host.
and they pay their bills.
They do pay their bills. They
They
make
may
Broadway
not
work.
wake up remembering when and how much the bills were, but they pay their bills.
Uh,
That's
but
funny.
I mean, the state house likes this idea that somehow they're going to turn Nashville red into America's red city, and it just keeps on not working. Like you look around, and I'm like, I know more people who are like, if I see Ben Shapiro on the street, I swear to God, I'm going for his fucking neck. Uh, I mean, this is a
Hashtag
common.
worth it.
Like, if people are like, wait, that guy lives here, fuck that noise.
Yeah,
Um,
right. That was me
and,
when I heard about it from up here. I'm like, wait, what? Oh God, I'm glad I
him
left.
and his perpetually sexually unsatisfied wife. Um, the number of times people have pointed out things that Ben Shapiro says, and are like, "Do you know how a vagina works? It really sounds
No,
like you don't."
no is the answer. And because we are getting through a lot more topics tonight, I'm going to use that vagina opportunity to
Yep.
leapfrog to Matrix babies, because when David sent this to me, the initial description he sent me was so fucking wordy and scientific, and I was like, I don't have time for that shit. What the fuck are we talking about? And he summarized it really well. Why don't you tell the people about the Matrix babies?
So there is now a move afoot in hospitals and amongst the, I want to point this out, pro-birth, not pro-life, pro-birth, anti-choice crowd. That, well, if a woman becomes comatose and she's still within childbearing years, the hospital should be able to offset the cost of her continued care while she's in the coma by using her as a surrogate.
It just sounds like so dark and fucked up that it's laughable, but it's like not.
The thing is, this is actually something someone wants to do.
Well, and it was
Someone at
some kind of
HCA or at Ascension Health sat down and they said, "You know what we should do
I
with
mean, it
those
came
women?"
from somewhere, and now it's in an ethics paper in some medical something. And for it to make it into an ethics paper in any kind of serious medical conversation is just kind of astonishing.
I mean, it is the most shocking.
It really
And
is.
again, you have to look at where we're actually talking about. I mean, and I will make this point time and time again. If the anti-choice crowd had said, "You know what we need to do in order to fight abortion? We need to make sure that that America is the cheapest, safest place to have a child, to give birth to a child, that there is support for mothers and children after the child is born, that there is a support system in place that makes it so that people don't want to have abortions."
That's weird.
And again, my classic example for this is
David, wait a
always,
minute. What you just said, that's kind of funny. Oh, yeah.
those all sound like Democratic
A
proposals,
recent
right?
president said that.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. Right when
and that
Barack Obama got my attention by saying, technically, I would prefer that we don't have abortion. I'm like, what? What you talking about, Willis? Because, and then he goes into that long definition that you just gave. Like, oh yeah, I can get down with that.
Yeah. Again, like all of the and that's how you knew that like alcohol prohibitionists primarily were their views tainted by a lot of other shit. Yes, but their primary focus was, we want to ban alcohol, and so they did a whole bunch of other stuff before they moved on banning alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
They made it possible for people to imagine, hey, maybe we don't need alcohol. Of course, that didn't work because they made it possible for people to think that, but the problem is people didn't want to.
I find that the right wing tends to work in complete pathetic futility against the nature of the human animal more than any other organized group of people. Like,
because
they're,
it's not.
they're against pleasure fucking, but we're wired for it.
No,
They think that you can take away vices and mind altering, physically enhancing experiences that didn't work out. Now we have pot falling off the prohibition list like a motherfucker every day. I mean,
I'm going to see if I can find this image real fast, because this is another thing that's making the rounds that falls in the same category. But there is this patriarchal movement that's making the rounds. Let me see. I may have to go find this image later and put it up, but it's this organization that's promoting to women the idea that patriarchy is the natural order of things, and that they're primarily there to be incubators. They're primarily there to service men and
so
to
they're just saying
have
the
their babies.
quiet part out loud again. Then it's interesting how many of these
Well,
little
because it's not
individual
quiet
tidbits are
anymore.
very
It's not
Handmaid's
that
Tale.
this is nothing that I'm doing. This is not quiet anymore. They are saying
Right.
this out loud.
Right. Exactly.
And this is why this is now an issue, is because now they're saying this out loud. Like, well, of course we'd use comatose women as incubators. That's all they're good for.
Right. Right. Yeah, it makes perfect sense that it tracks all the way through. Well, last but not least, I saw this headline right before we got together for the show, and I had to throw it in. Apparently, there's a Chinese spy balloon floating over the United States right now, and it is high enough that they're not worried about commercial air traffic, and they've decided that they're not going to shoot it down. And when I read that, I thought, okay, they definitely know some shit, or they would shoot it. Like they would shoot it down if they thought it was gonna accomplish anything. So point number one that's kind of funny is, yeah, nice try, China. Good luck. Have fun. Take your pictures. Move on. But the other thing is, I immediately thought Independence Day and Top Gun, that I hope everybody in the military at a base during this Passover of this balloon is going, hey, hi, hey, how's it going? And just nothing but photos of fucking Americans flipping you off. That's what
I
I hope
also want
China
to
ends
point
up.
out that Lockheed Martin tried to float a version of this to the United States military 20 years ago. They like this a super high altitude command and control and reconnaissance blimp. And they even had an idea, and for a while I remember seeing it, because when the movie Stealth came out, which for those of you who haven't seen it, it's an awful movie. I do not recommend it. But it, one of the things they had as an example of, like, and I'm sure Lockheed Martin paid someone to make sure he was there. One of the ideas Lockheed Martin had for these super high altitude blimps was as refueling stations, right? That jets would be able to
What
refuel.
could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
From these, worldwide system of high altitude blimps that would have a bunch of fuel, and they could refuel from these blimps. The military looked at it, and they're like, so wait, let me get this straight. You're going to sell me a blimp, and I'm not necessarily kiboshing this off out of hand, but everyone will be able to see it, and it can't go that fast. So I'm going to need you to walk me through where you think this is a good idea. Because as they put it, apparently, as one general pointed out, it's like all the Hajis, which is military slang for Islamic militants, all the Hajis have to do is stuff an extra pound of fuel in a stupid rocket and shoot it at the thing, and we've lost $1 billion worth of blimp.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's time to drink, and we're doing a little bit differently right now. Hopefully, we'll develop this into some more segmenting. I talked David, much to his chagrin, into a single beer feature in the show. Now, that doesn't mean that David or I or anybody is obligated to just drink one. I'm making a little bit of a health move to try to be able to spread out the beer. Like this week, I have a lot of beer summits. I had a beer summit last night with a developer here in Grand Rapids who I had originally stood up and had some negative things to say about his project, his building, at the commission meeting last week. And he handed me his business card. He said he'd love to talk some more. We ended up going to the Mitten last night, and I shit you not, we sat at the Mitten for 5 hours. And dude's a nice guy. So shout out to Peter, cool dude. He runs a B Corp that's a building company.
Oh, nice.
And he has the right head in the game, but the system, the apparatus that we have available to us in the city, state, nation is not great. And we talked about a lot of that stuff. We talked about a lot of ways that it could be more honest with the people, which is not his job to make it. It's the government's job to make things more honest. So had a great meeting, great discussion. I have found in Grand Rapids, David, more people here seem willing to sit down and have a beer with people of a different opinion. Nashville, never did I see people on the opposite side of some topic invite each other or invite me to go talk over a beer. The only time I ever was extended one of those invitations was that Rick Williams prick, that like fucking solid Trumper that runs that limo company that fought hard against every transit thing we ever tried to do. Yeah. And I actually told him flat out, like, I'm sorry, Rick, I don't see any way in the world that I could come to an understanding with you, so I'm just not going to have that conversation. It's just not going to
happen. I don't think one of the things I think that's different further north than it is here is that here the battle lines are far more clearly drawn, and they've been that way for over 200 years.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about last night. I said I think in the South it's so oh, what's the old Family Feud? The little cowboy characters from Looney Tunes,
Hatfields and McCoys.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
By the way, so what Lucas is trying to look
tribal.
At right now is I found the image of the support patriarchy.
Oh, I actually wasn't, but I guess I will. While we do beers, I will see if I can get that into the mix. So now that you know we're going to feature one, we're going to jump into our one feature and talk about a couple beers and give a little bit more detail than we normally would, because that's part of this idea, is to try to really give the focus. We may mention other beers or drink other beers, but we're going to really talk about a beer apiece on the show, and that will bring us to what you drinking. So I'll let you go first while I look at this random message with an image that you sent.
Oh God, it's horrible. It's absolutely it's PG. Well, I mean PG from the point of
like we care.
There's no nudity or something. Well, I mean we don't need to go back in Facebook jail again for that, like we did with the Putin stick thing.
Look, tonight's penis is pixelated as it rests lovingly in Jim Jordan's hand. So if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, go find the show graphic for tonight, and you'll get it.
So I'm going to be honest. I chose tonight's my beer for tonight based on the name alone. We've actually done a beer from Kloster Brauerei Index before. And it was another fest beer. That's what these guys are known for. But this one is just a lot of fun. So, and just to clarify, this Andescher Special Hell, Hell is it's a shortened version of Helles, which is another way to say fest beer in German, right? It's another way to describe this style of beer is as a Helles. So they're just shortening the name. They're not thinking of it as like fiery burning place. But yes, it's called Special Hell. And I gotta say, like, as a fest beer goes, it's really light. This is super light. And it's a little interesting. It's got some really prominent malt notes. I mean, considering the color, right? You would not expect something that had this like almost transparent, really light golden color. to have as big of a malt note as it does, and it really has a big bright malt note, and it balances that with a really big citrus note. Uh, so it's malt and citrus. It's very lemony, is how I would put it. Uh, when I say citrus, because citrus can mean a lot of things. Like when I
Yeah,
have this back up
I
here.
usually assume orange optimistically because it's my favorite. But
Yeah, I have this backup, Northwoods Mac and Margie double IPA over here, and it has sort of a more general citrus note. Like you wouldn't normally, as I've been drinking that, I'm like, I wouldn't normally associate that immediately with lemon. This is lemon. Like like if you took a bite of lemon cake, this is the flavor. That's the type of lemon flavor that you're getting from this. But it's super super light. It's not drinking heavy, but the flavor profile just really doesn't match the color. It's got a ton of reviews on Untapped. Uh, just an absolute metric ton of reviews. Where did I put it?
and I'm gonna have to do a translation on the description because
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of
it's
the
in
things that
German
these
on
guys don't do
Untapped.
is
A
they don't care
well-known
about any
festival
of us
beer
English speakers.
stands in bright light gold. That's not a lot. There's not a lot of poetic rambling in that description.
No, I mean the people who make this are very German.
Clearly.
um,
Um,
but
and notice that we're putting in some more information. So that sucker has a 5.9% and it's a 3.52 average rating. But look at those ratings. David was like, this one's got a lot of ratings. You're going to be surprised. I'm like, what's it got like 10,000? He's like, ha, ha, ha. Like, holy shit, 25,000.
yeah, no, I mean, and the
Like
thing is,
all the beer drinkers have rated this beer.
well, what is all the German beer drinkers? So
Right.
what this is Klosterbräu Andux is like kind of like a Goose Island, or it's a very popular beer in Germany. It's a very
Mm,
popular brewery in
mm.
Germany. It's not one that gets exported a lot, though. Again, like when most people think German beers, they're thinking, all sorts of other, like Paulaner or those sorts of beers. And you have to remember, just like we don't export that much Budweiser, or we don't export that much, we export Budweiser, but we don't export, Bearded Iris. We don't export that much Goose Island.
Mm.
Um, it gives people a very distorted version of what is American brewing. Uh, Luckily, American, smaller breweries have risen up at such an astonishing rate in America that more of our beer is getting out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've become more of a destination for more foreign breweries to be like, hey, I want to see how this does in a big market, because one of the nice things about having 400 freaking million people and being a developed economy is it's a big market
Right.
for
Right.
them to sell their beer to. There's lots of potential customers. So, but this stuff is still definitely still special order. Like this is not something where you can go, like, even if you own a bar, where you can go to your
Mm.
distributor and be like, hey, I want you to send me a keg of Klosterbräu. Um, they're going to be like, Gesundheit. Uh,
Well, is it?
it's
Would you say that it's probably we're out of season right now? Is it a warmer weather beer, like a early fall?
I can't tell, because here's the thing. It's so malty. It is
Mm,
big malt. And
okay.
again, you would look at this and would not expect big malt flavor. And
No,
you
no.
get a big malt flavor from this. Uh
It's very golden. I mean, I can see why they use that really literal description of gold in the glass, but um, it really is. It's clear and
yeah, I mean, like,
is
here's
it
the thing.
watery? Is it like light and watery, or does it have character?
No, I mean, it has character. It has that big malt flavor, and then it
Yeah.
follows it up with that big lemon flavor.
Okay.
Uh so I mean, it is an interesting combination that I'm getting here.
Cool.
Would I normally reach for this maybe in warmer weather? Maybe. but I mean, it's still just as good as a cold weather beer,
Mm.
simply because it has big flavor. I will say this though, like like if it was hotter, I would probably want something crisper. This is
Okay.
not
Yeah.
crisp, even though it has that lemon flavor. It's more like a lemon kind. When you mix it with that big malt flavor, it's more like a little bit of a lemon sour.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but it's not sour. Like the beer itself is not sour, but it's more like someone squeezed lemon juice into it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it doesn't have the sugar notes to sort of balance it out and make it, lemonade-y. Uh,
It's more tart,
it's
but not a sour. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit more tart, but this is a really solid, just general all around drinker. I would not, again, this is one of those things where I have my favorites, but I mean, if I was in a bar and I saw this, I'd be like, oh, I know that. That's a pretty safe bet. I like how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
I understand the 3.52 rating at that point, which is I'm like, is there anything about this that makes me go, wow?
Mm.
Eh. I mean, other than like big malt and really like color, I'm like, that's an interesting fact.
Yeah.
But flavor
Right.
wise, is there anything about this that makes me go, wow? Now, but I mean, as something that I would sit and drink like 4 or 5 of in the course of a few hours. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'll jump in with mine that I unsurprisingly picked up last night at the Mitten. So this was a new-ish. I don't know how long it's been on the menu. Pretty new though. There are only 12 ratings, as you can see on Untapped. Um, but it's coming in well rated by everybody that's tried it. I still need to rate it. I need to be a good user and rate the damn thing. Um, so this is Pip's Headache, and it jumped off the menu based on its fun little name. It's 9.2% Imperial Double IPA. Uh, the Mitten does a really good job with their lineup of IPAs, and the nice thing about what they do, they actually have IPAs that are distinct from each other. And in a lot of cases, you can go to a brewery and they'll have an IPA section, and you're kind of hard pressed to be able to say what the difference is. Like if you took a flight of all the IPAs, and I've had this experience more than once, I consider this kind of more the rule and the Mitten doing the exception. If you took a lineup of all the IPAs, let's say there are 8 of them, I've only ever been able to discern maybe 3 defining differences between that array. Every 2 or 3 of them tend to be kind of the same animal, but with some slight adjustment. So this one, and I haven't sipped it yet because I want to be able to give a fresh impression, a re-impression. I did 2 of these last night during my sit down chit chat, and I was very impressed. And of course, with 9.2, it's a good ice breaking, social lubricating starter without being like a heavy, loaded down, barrel age kind of deal. So here we go. Yeah, that's pretty much how I remember it. So the thing that struck me is, I mean, I didn't know if maybe something might be different, but the thing that struck me was it's very smooth, and they describe it as a big, soft double IPA made with Brew One, Raquel. I hope I'm saying that right, and Mosaic. And I can almost pick out Mosaic now. Like you would have never
Yeah.
told me 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. You, the guy that told me I should learn more about IPA, I never could have been told I would one of these days be able to say, I think there's Mosaic there. But now I'm at that point where I can tell. So big soft is an interesting way of describing that. And that's one of the reasons why my eye went to it after the name got my attention. Like big soft, that sounds interesting. I've never heard anybody describe it like that.
I can see that as a descriptor.
What lands for me, there's like a mid-mouth blast of piney IPA character, but it's not that like cheek imploding kind of like whoa kind of thing. It like dances to where it wants to be there, but then it backs off, and it makes it really smooth and kind of mellow. But it's Imperial Double. I mean, it's got some beef to it, but it's distributed so well in the overall palate experience, and it's easy to drink, which is probably part of the reason it's could be a little bit of a dangerous choice. So I love their description. On June 2nd, 1925, they do this with all their beers. They got a baseball theme. Um, it the apparently this is a inkjet printed label because it got a little wet and got a little squishy. But they've done this great labeling when you fill up a can to take home. Um, this baseball kind of vibe on all their lettering, and their whole bar's theme is baseball, and most of the beers are named after baseball stuff. So this taught me a fun trivia fact I didn't know. On June 2nd, 1925, Grand Rapids native and New York Yankees first baseman Wally Pipp asked not to play due to a headache. Pipp was replaced by Lou Gehrig, beginning his 2,130 game streak. So this beer is named in honor of the dude that sat one out, creating the legend of Lou Gehrig. And that just cracks me up. I love having a good story behind a name of anything, and that gave me like an all-around positive experience with this beer. So
Yeah,
they're pouring it right
headache,
now.
I imagine, was a way of them saying hungover.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it great that a brewery's making a beer in his honor.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, that was a cool story, good beer, and it's happening right now at the Mitten. People can go pack one up for home or throw a couple back over some of their delicious pizza. So David, I did put together your thing. Before we move on, before we get into our
this was the advertisement that I saw that
before we get into our main topic of the evening, here is David's patriarchy image that he was talking about. So yeah, what the fuck? I mean, like, there's just there's so many wrong, terrible things that I can just unload here. Like, this guy looks like the kind of insecure prick that has to hug women that way. And she totally looks like the kind of chick that's super proud of everything right now, and in 10 years is going to fucking kill him in his sleep. So, oh boy. Yep.
future Lorena Bobbitt.
That's where they are, ladies and gentlemen. That's where they are.
But the thing is, they're not even hiding it anymore. It's not even a game where it's just like, oh well, we're just kind of taking a general stance on. It's now to the point where they're just like, we don't just want to roll back the clock to the 1950s. We want to enforce a police state that will permanently put us somewhere around what we think that like the 1800s were like. But the 1800s weren't even like that.
Yep. Well, let's dive
women
into
weren't
some
allowed
of
to do
these.
stuff. I'm like, that's one of my favorite stories when people are like, and one of my favorite stories when people are like, oh, America has always been a man's country. I'm like, Andrew Jackson's first wife straight up divorced him and used an even older technique to divorce him called the walking divorce, which is she simply said bye, took her stuff, and moved into another guy's house.
Yeah. Never mind.
Which was completely normal.
Never mind the
time.
rifle-toting pioneer women defending the homestead. It's just the mythology is all fucked up for those people. So, speaking of fucked up regressive mythology, let's talk about the hearings. So, in the House, it's going to be nothing but a fucking clown show, right?
Oh yeah.
The hearing about immigration, the premise here, at first it was Jim Jordan. He's one of the crazies, the total bad as it can go as far as GQP nuts, but um, he's towing the line on a lot of their messaging and bullshit, but he's also doing his own thing to some extent. So the towing the line part is this tired ass concept. I like if I didn't know how stupid, just how rock fucking stupid the right wing base is, I would be surprised this works. But you have the Republican Party my whole fucking lifetime. Oh, the border. There are brown people coming for jobs that I won't do. And it used to be all these people coming across the border. Oh, they're coming across the border. Well, then we got our shit together and we started apprehending people. So they switched their argument to all these people apprehended trying to cross the border. We have a problem. It's like, what the fuck? We figured out how to do what the fuck you wanted everybody to do. Here come people. They're not supposed to come over here yet because they didn't do the right shit with the law. So we're going to fucking arrest them.
I also want to point
That's what
out
you
that
wanted. But now they're using it as a metric to say we're failing. It's fucking astonishing.
I also want to point out, I actually did a little bit of research, and I what prompted me to do this research was actually Ken Burns' most recent Holocaust documentary. And one of the points that he makes in the first episode of the documentary was how immigration was being treated in the United States at the time, which is right after the Great Depression. This is when we see the birth of the modern American immigration regime. And one of the first things they did, there was a lot pointed at newer immigrants, but one of the big things that they did was they basically just rounded up brown, Mexican Americans and anyone they thought who had immigrated from Mexico into the United States, and all across the southern United States, and just rounded them up. And it's estimated now that as many as 6 out of 10 who were arrested and deported back to Mexico were in fact U.S. citizens. But I mean, this is where we see that. I mean, we have to. I think it's important to understand how old this trope is. This is a now nearly 100-year-old trope of people crossing the border, and we need to be scared of them. And we're scared. We're scared of the Latino people living in the southern United States. And it's entirely preposterous because, of course, the irony was, and this is what was pointed out, a lot of those people who were rounded up in the 1930s as part of this anti-immigration push, they didn't move to the United States. The United States came to them. They were living in Texas, and then the United States conquered Texas. They were living in California, and the United States conquered California. They were living in Arizona or Colorado, and the United States conquered those pieces from Mexico. Right? These were Latinos who had been living there, and somehow this white base wants to constantly believe that we just took over empty land.
Yeah, right.
There were people living there. Brown people.
The core of this, of course, is xenophobic, racist, etc. All these paranoias and insecurities, which are basically just the brand.
No. Right. We need to be clear. This is not xenophobia. Because if it was xenophobia, it would be the Canadians need to stay out, the Norwegians need to stay out, the English need to stay out, the Irish need to stay out. No. This is not xenophobia. This is just pure racism.
I think there's a portion of it for the casual, like, get on the bandwagon types, that it's not that complex. I think it's an othering, it's a difference, and it's what's talked about. I think those same people would go along with it if you had an anti-Canadian immigration rant. Like, I think they would jump on that train too, because they're in this weird frame of nationalism where they believe that the fabric of the country is made of stuff that it ain't, and then coming apart. And
I think you're giving them way too much credit.
now there's a casual fucking idiot that isn't outwardly like race purity about it. They're just like, oh, well, this sounds like a problem. Yeah, okay. It's easy to be afraid of things I don't understand and know. And that's where they get in. Now, they may quickly escalate to the card carrying racist side of that fence. But yeah, there's always been the same core of it, like you say. It just amazes me just the fact that a normal, rational, everyday proceeding of government is taking place with the double talk just so bare ass naked. Like, we weren't happy when too many people crossed illegally successfully, so we went after you for that. Now that you've got control of that, we're going to come after you for apprehending the people that we told you should be apprehending, and we're going to hold up the number of apprehensions somehow as a sign of failure. And then Jordan gets involved with his imaginary fucking bullshit. And his whole thing now is, this is what Joe Biden's plan was. Joe Biden wants to destabilize the United States by having a porous border, except you just talked about how it's not porous because we're fucking apprehending people. And Joe Biden wants the drug cartels to make their way into the United States, which is just, I mean, it's just ludicrous anyway if you look at the ones that are perfectly legal, Pfizer. And then, you know, this idea that anybody in power in the United States would want to seed more of a fentanyl crisis. And they brought in this motherfucker. I was in here, right here behind the chair, in here this morning with my little dumbbells doing my attempt at fitness. And I found myself yelling at NPR again, which happens because they brought this fucking guy to testify whose wife died something fentanyl overdose or something. Okay. And that dude like pulled the line. He pulled the classic fucking urban legend shit. If someone comes across the border with even an ounce of fentanyl, it can be destructive of thousands of lives in very short order. And it's like, you're a fucking idiot. Sorry your wife died. You're a dumbass.
Well, and I want to point out that the fentanyl crisis. Here's where they're looking at this, and they're trying to find a way to blame immigrants, because the fentanyl is coming from abroad for the most part,
and
because
they're trying to make it synonymous.
And they're trying to. There is an importation of fentanyl issue, but it's not hitting. One of the things that is consistent is, I don't think anyone in most urban districts, most urban environments, are worried about fentanyl. Because that's not something that, statistically, that urban drug users are using. Sorry, that's work. I'm gonna have to call him back here in a second.
David's show prep 101.
Sorry. I'm used to leaving my phone on so that work can call me. But
we're gonna have to start running one of those trailers before our show about silencing cell phones, like this.
Right?
Is a movie
Apparently,
theater.
I have failed. But the place where these fentanyl deaths are happening are in exurban and suburban America, primarily because these are people looking for consistently lower cost, and this is where it's striking to me that these people aren't making a connection. People in cities are buying more expensive drugs, right? Cocaine, heroin, more designer drugs. I'm not looking to find Molly or ecstasy in fucking, and not as someone who uses these, I want to be very clear, but I'm not looking to find Molly or ecstasy in Sandusky, Ohio. Right? That's not what people are using to get high. There's a reason why the opioid crisis happened primarily in rural America. It's because these people were looking for the lowest cost option to get high. And so one of the reasons we're seeing a fentanyl problem in rural America is because these drug dealers are looking for ways to uh, take inferior product and pump it up, right?
Hmm.
And a little bit of fentanyl in there does the job. So it's basic economics, right? I can't cut heroin or cocaine with fentanyl and have it and expect my buyers to keep buying from me. But I can cut a little bit of hillbilly heroin, that is oxycontin, or I can cut a little bit of meth or all these other things with a little bit of fentanyl to people who don't have the money to buy good drugs
Yeah.
and who don't have that sort of relationship with their dealer where it's a mutually beneficial thing where the user gets high and the drug dealer gets a repeat buyer. These people don't care about repeat buyers. They just care about continually they're looking for a quick easy buck. And part of that is because rural America is suffering economically. The reason the fentanyl crisis is happening in rural America is because the economics of rural America are so bad. And then you look around and you say, okay, what is the common denominator of how rural America is approaching their economics? And it's these cut taxes, uh, you know, support the job creators
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Support
mentality,
the money hoarders.
depresses the wages of workers, does not provide them adequate social services, and you end up with these people overdosing from fentanyl because you have an economic situation in which it's cheaper for dealers just to not give a shit about who's buying their drugs.
Pretty much. Well, it's just it's a cycle, right? Like we see this every time they're in control, the ability to do anything, but specifically hearings, and it's always some kind of crazy horse shit, and it's not surprising. But the just the waste of resources and the sucking of oxygen that could have been used for something much more appropriate. And it's always some kind of weird imagined crisis or manufactured outrage of some breed. And it's very rarely like a noble save America agenda. And you know, we spent a lot of time on our side on the January 6th committee, and it was a very save America agenda. There's not a damn thing in my life that has ever gone up or down in quality or better offness or whatever the fuck, um, based on the state of affairs at the border. And I think that's pretty standard for a lot of Americans. There's a scapegoat principle. There's the old South Park. They took our jobs. That fucking bullshit. There's a reason they made fun of it. Fat, lazy white Americans won't do a lot of those jobs. So who the fuck cares? So there's just so much mythology in it.
I will say one thing. I think uh, the situation in America has gone down for some people for a very specific thing, which is when we passed the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Hmm.
And this is one of the things you don't hear the Canadians complain about about NAFTA. They're a developed economy. You never heard them complain about it, and there's a reason why. So NAFTA was actually supposed to be two things in the United States. The first bit was free trade. So if you had a textile mill, like this definitely impacted North Carolina. It used to be that you could get a job in a North Carolina textile mill and expect to support your family. But then NAFTA happened, and the textile mill said, no, we're moving to Mexico. And this happened to a lot of rural America.
We can go exploit a population and be more profitable. Fuck you.
Ticonderoga pencils, right, used to have their pencil factory in Pennsylvania. And what did Ticonderoga pencils do when NAFTA happened? They began the process of moving their pencil factory to Mexico. So for those people, yes, things changed over time. Like, they kept on getting worse.
Mhm.
But here's why they kept on getting worse, though. It wasn't just because of NAFTA. There's a reason why Canada didn't complain. Canada passed NAFTA, and then they passed a retraining bill. They
Right.
said, if you lose your
They took care of
job,
their people.
right? Yeah, if you lose
And
your
we don't do
job
that.
because the factory moved to Mexico or the United States or wherever, here's what we'll do. You can show up. We're going to help pay for your housing. We're going to pay for you to help you find another job and promote an industry that's going to stay in Canada and help that industry grow, so that because this is one of the things that opponents of free trade constantly look at with the United States, which is what's called the balance of trade deficit, which is we import more stuff than we export. Canada doesn't have that problem to the same extent that the United States does. I'm not going to say that the balance of trade deficit is necessarily an awful thing, because it assumes just raw physical goods. It doesn't assume money coming in and out. It just says we shipped out this value of goods, we imported this value of goods, but it doesn't take into account finance or anything like that. So it's not necessarily, for the United States especially, it's not a very good measure. I mean, if you look at Singapore's balance of trade deficit, it's bad. Why? Because Singapore doesn't make shit. They just make money. And they have to import everything.
Sounds familiar.
But Canada said, we're going to do this smart. We're going to follow basic economics, right? Really basic economics, which is...
And give a shit factor. Just to give a shit factor. The only time you hear retraining come up is the left.
If there's a reason for that industry to be in Canada, then we want to help that industry grow and sell more of that.
Right.
And after NAFTA, there was supposed to be a follow-on bill to be passed by Congress to do exactly that for the United States. And the Republicans killed it. The Republicans said,
with them, it all comes down to resisting change. Resisting change. That it doesn't matter.
Again, Republicans voted in favor of NAFTA, but when it came to have the follow-on bill to retrain workers who would lose their jobs to free trade.
But it all comes down to change, right? Like, wait, well, we shouldn't have to make anybody change. Look at coal. You're going to put people out of work. Yeah, no shit. They need to learn how to, not work in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Let's make it possible for them to do that. It just always comes down to change, Angry about fucking trans kids. Oh, it's change. At the end of the day, it seems like that's the core. Is, well, you mean something's going to change? I got to change something? I got to ask somebody to change something? I got to relearn? Oh, God, learning?
No,
asking the right to learn things?
I think that's too simplistic. I think if you go down to the very base of it, it's about power. It is, at the very base of it, it is about power. It's not that they mind change. They don't mind change if they feel like that change gives them power. Why did Republicans vote for free trade and then turn around and not vote to empower workers to get them better, newer, better jobs, right? Because this is one of the places where the Democratic Party fell entirely the fuck down in the 90s and aughts. Fell entirely down. Was not standing up for workers.
Yeah.
And as a consequence,
like in a meaningful way. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these fucking gutless punks that we unfortunately have to call Democrats, they think the supporting the workers that the fucking bullshit union printing for all their yard signs. They don't understand the real journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, for them, it's about power. For Republicans, it's constantly about a negotiation of power and the constant belief that if only they do these magic. There's a reason why it seems that Republicans have an attraction these days to magical thinking of JFK is going to come back, or uh, the fluoride that we put in tap water is feminizing America, or all the rest of this nonsense.
Which
I mean,
is
there's a
always
reason why there's this
hysterical at the
magical.
core. It's always like, wait, that's your play? You guys think Kennedy's coming back? Holy shit. I mean, somebody was so afraid of his progress that he blew his brains out. Come
No,
on.
it's RFK.
Oh, that's right. But still, it doesn't matter. Same fucking thing.
He didn't actually die in a plane crash. Anyway, back to the point. There's a reason why there's this magical thinking.
JFK Jr., that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Right. But still,
there's this reason why they have this magical thinking.
In what world do they imagine these people that I don't know. It's
because it is that if I do this, it's ritualistic in their minds. Economics is not a matter of science or analysis. It's a matter of ritual. There's a reason why there's a lot of televangelists who talk about
sorcery,
seed money.
faith, and religion. Yeah.
And these televangelists talk about seed money, and they talk about, well, if you send the church $100, that's like a seed, and God is going to give you back, $10,000. That's not how that works, boys and girls. That's not how the reality works. But again, it's this idea of ritual. And if I follow the ritual, then I will prosper. And of course, what keeps on happening is, of course, there is no ritual. There is regulation and law and intervention and forethought, which goes into these things. There is no ritual you can do to make money, right? Other than be a cult leader or a televangelist, or at that point, yes, having a ritual will make you money.
A New York con man, for example.
Right. So in their minds, this is about power. And if they follow the ritual, they're supposed to receive these benefits. And of course, they never do. And they don't understand why. And to me, it's one of the saddest stories about how we ended up with QAnon, in my opinion, is we have a bunch of people who kept on being told, someone's taking your stuff, and that's why you're not getting it. And then on the flip side, by the same people who are telling them that black and brown people and women and lesbians and gay people are all taking their stuff, they, on the flip side of that, they keep on showing them the same picture of these white men with a ton of money and saying, look at how successful these people are. This is why Western and they clarify it as Western society, right? This is why Western society is superior. We gave these men the opportunity to succeed, and they succeeded. And so now it becomes this dichotomy of, on one side, I'm white, I'm Protestant, I am a native-born American, I am a true American. Why don't I have this wealth? And on the flip side, it's, well, someone's taking it from you, but they didn't take it from them. So I don't understand. And then you end up with this idea of someone's disrupting the ritual, right? Someone's disrupting the ritual with a counter ritual.
Of course.
They are out there harvesting children for adrenochrome in their counter ritual against me. And it's insane. This is where the thinking is. And again, it's about power. And so what we end up with in this idea of immigration in the United States, it is the idea that if only I can keep these people out, I will somehow regain my power.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If only
A
I can,
constant shell game of scapegoating, really.
and for the Republicans in Congress who shot down that retraining bill that was supposed to follow on NAFTA,
Mm-hmm.
it is, how dare we interfere with someone else's power ritual? Right? This is commerce. These people will follow the ritual, and somehow they'll be okay.
Right. Well, this is just one of many unhinged, wacky things that are happening. You volunteered to put yourself through the mental anguish of recounting some of these investigations that are on tap now. I mean, it's hard to even know where to start, but the floor is yours for your pet discussion on the
I mean,
investigations.
this has gotten insane. I want to point out, like, Republicans were already being insane when there was a Democratic Congress. Rand Paul
Ugh.
and I'm going to be honest. One of my pet peeves is people who get the fuck out of their lane.
Oh boy.
And I was talking about this earlier today. I have a background in economics, political science, and history and law. Those are my four little lanes, right? I have I can show that I have academic credentials in those areas. I don't talk to electricians and be like, "Yes, I'm going to instruct you on how to put together a breaker box." No. You want to know why?
Right.
Because I don't fucking know. I know the wires go in. I know it has switches. I know I flip the switches, and shit goes off and on. Right? I don't. Other than like the basic concept of like what they taught me in school about capacitors and amps and wattage and shit. I'm not able to wire a house. I can understand basic concepts of applied force and like how you have to support shit and do all that. I cannot build a house. I can understand concepts of how, plant fibers can be harvested and put in a loom. I am not going to be able to make that flag, right? I do not get out of my lane because I know enough to know that I don't know how that works. It is shocking to me with people like Rand Paul and all these Republicans who want to literally have Jesus take the wheel and just let that thing go from lane to lane to lane to lane to lane to lane to lane. Doesn't matter if they have no idea how any of that works. I love Rick Scott's little complaint after Mitch McConnell decided to tell him to go get his shine box yesterday and kicked him off his committee for trying to take the minority leader's job. Mitch McConnell took Rick Scott, senator from Florida, off the Commerce Committee, off of basically anything except what he absolutely had to have him on. And McConnell has basically been like, yeah, I did it because he tried to take my position, and now I'm punishing him. That's how that works. Senator Lee from Utah also got the same treatment for backing Rick Scott. But Rick Scott, who likes to say, "Well, I'm a businessman. I was a big businessman," and be like, "So what actual talent, not skills, talents do you have, and what skills have you developed?" Right? Because most people get that confused. Talent is something that's innate to you. Skill is something that you learn. What talents do you have naturally that applied to this, and then what skills did you learn from it? So like, for instance, law is not a skill, right? Or pardon me, law is not a talent. Law is a skill, right? You have to learn how to do law. Economics is not a talent.
You could have a talent for arguing.
Skill.
You could have a talent for wordsmithing, but the law is the skill that you may practice talents
Yeah.
within.
I mean, and most people think law is all about arguing. It's not about arguing. It's about convincing someone else to uh, give you something that you want in exchange for something that they want. That's the majority of law is that. The majority of law is negotiation.
Yeah.
Uh, and even in criminal law, it's still negotiation, and no one has an innate talent in negotiation. That is a skill you have to learn. I've seen people who thought they had a talent in it. I'm going to be honest. You put them up against a lawyer, and they're going to grind them into dust. But I mean, these people are just weaving back and forth.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, because they don't know what they're talking about, they want to have investigations into all this shit that, again, their base, which has no skills, wants them to investigate because they don't understand.
Right.
Like, here's the thing. When Anthony Fauci gets in front of a television camera and says, this is the medical situation, I want to point out, I do not have a background in medicine other than a basic understanding of what a virus is, what bacterium is, how viruses generally work. Okay, it goes into a cell, and then it uses the organelles of the cell to replicate the virus, to replicate itself, and then it kills the cell, and then it spreads to other cells. Basic operation of a virus. Now,
Sure.
if you were to ask me about what proteins or enzymes or any of the rest of that shit is, I'd be like, you know what you need to go talk to? You need to go talk to an infectious disease expert
Right.
like
Right.
Anthony Fauci.
We have one of those. He's coming to the press conference. But
Right?
it's okay. Just blow it off and
And then you have
ignore
people
it.
like Rand Paul, who, and I want to point out, people are like, well, Rand Paul's a medical doctor. Rand Paul looks at your fucking eyes.
Yeah.
Listen, if I need new glasses, I'll go talk to Rand Paul.
Right. Right.
If I have an infectious disease, I'm going to go talk to the specialist in infectious disease.
After he says you need to do your own research. That's the way to science the shit.
Right?
Out
I need to do my own.
of
Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
So now we've got investigations and other so there's other committees and hearings. You've got the weaponization of the federal government, which is one of the most laughable ones.
Oh yeah,
right?
this I want to point out. They did a casual survey of the FBI after the January 6th, and as many as half of those people who were polled saw no difference between the Black Lives Matter protests and the January 6th insurrection. So this idea that the FBI is suddenly weaponized against conservatives,
which is funny because
pull up.
Today they did searches on more Biden home space,
and they did Pence. They did Pence as well.
And it's funny how so many things are only a problem when it's done to the right. The FBI is weaponized. They made them search Trump. No, Trump made them search Trump's home.
Yeah.
Trump made that happen to himself by refusing to cooperate. And then lo and behold, oh, wait a minute. Now they're going to go and they're going to search Biden's place and then search his other place today. They're going to search Pence's place. It's just going to be how it happens. But here's what blew my mind about some of that. They didn't find any records that were classified, but they took some handwritten notes and stuff. And there was some discussion on NPR about how even handwritten notes and stuff jotted down by people with top secret clearance could be related to top secret topics.
Yeah.
And that really gets me thinking about holy shit, how far are we going to nitpick this? Because I just kind of generally trust that there's some level of discretion and that, they're not, I don't know, stuffing things in the White House toilet and flushing it.
Yeah, right. Literally, Trump tried to do. I mean, it's. Listen,
And then, so with
I can
weaponization,
tell
what
you
are
from
some of the other
experience.
classics that are in this lineup? There are a bunch of different ones. Aren't they doing something about the J6 committee itself, like a committee on that committee?
Oh yeah, they're doing a committee to investigate the January 6th committee because they want to find out where they got information from.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so they want to find the people who they want to punish the witnesses who showed up in front of the J6 committee. Number one, they want to punish the members of the J6 committee. They want
Mhm.
to find out what branches of law enforcement reported information to the J6 committee and find some way to punish them. Uh, it, it and they're trying to punish Fauci,
Right.
and they're trying to. I mean, it's and again, what this is about for them is again, this is about an exercise for them. An investigation is not about correcting something or finding the truth of something
No,
or
no.
doing any of that. I
It's
want to point
headline
out
hits.
at its height during the Republican Congress, there were eight eight committees with open investigations on Benghazi.
Yep.
8 committees. The Democrats had one committee devoted to an attempted overthrow of the fucking republic.
Right, right. Like I was talking about, the Democrats will show up and try to do some shit that actually has something to do with saving the country, and the Republicans will show up and deal with butthurt.
I mean,
It's just
it's
amazing.
insane. And the thing is, the Republicans have taken to doing this. This has become the key for Republicans to go back and ironically, this is an older form of politics. Of like for instance, and it still is true in some instances today. For instance, you cannot be a good senator or congressman from Kansas unless you somehow find your way on the agriculture committee,
Yeah,
right? It's expected
that checks out.
that you're going to try and do everything you can to get on the agriculture committee and show your voters that you're doing things that are relevant to them. Uh,
Shilling
what
for
the
that
Republicans are
porn
trying to
lobby
do,
every day.
yeah, what they're trying to do is replicate that for
Yeah.
people who want to see the exercise of Republican power, right? We're going to go punish Democrats. We're going to go stig it to the libs.
Right. I was just about to say that. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Well, it'll be a topic that I'm sure that you'll see us revisit from time to time because it's going to be going for a hot minute. Um, I don't see the lunacy subsiding anytime soon. Um, I keep wondering what the next humorous, silly, stupid journey will be that they go on. What committee will they come up with next? Almost. Because the weaponization of the federal government one, that's a humdinger. That one is truly amazing. Like,
And I want to finish with one
pettiest of
last one
names.
that ties into our earlier immigration issue. The biggest issue, the biggest committee hearing that's set to start up is the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, Secretary Mayorkas is the Secretary of Homeland Security, and they want to impeach him over the quote porous border. There is no reason to impeach him. That what they want to do is they want to have an impeachment hearing in the Senate. They want to pass this impeachment in the House and then go to the Senate and have a trial of
Mhm.
Secretary Mayorkas so that they can show their supporters that the Democrats were completely intractable. They didn't want to work with us at all on any of this, and instead they kept this obviously incompetent and corrupt individual in charge of Homeland Security.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Well, these are
There
the
is nothing that
same.
this guy has done that. First of all, from even a slightly leftist perspective, this guy is no friend to immigration.
Mhm.
Uh, he's literally just following, for the most part, Trump policies that were put in place that Biden has, for the most part, left in place because he doesn't really want to touch that issue of immigration. And the only thing he's been doing that's slightly less bad is not going after law-abiding immigrants who are just trying to make a living. I mean, if you get caught doing a crime, they're still going to deport you. But if you aren't committing any other crime other than you entered the United States, they're gonna, and you've applied for asylum, they're not gonna be dickish. That's the only thing that he's done. The only thing that he's done is basically demilitarized ICE from Jew catchers.
But that's what they want. They want to feel like there's a hard ass shit kicking band of law enforcement heroes that are
no. What they want are Nazi Jew catchers. I want to be very clear about what they want. They want that idea that there's an SS battalion of ICE somewhere out there catching brown people, and if they go across the border, great. I'm going to be honest. With the way the Republicans are talking about these things these days, they like, oh well, they need to be dealt with. What do we think that they're going to do to them? Right? They're already talking about killing transgender people. They're already talking about killing gay people openly. What do you think they're going to do to Latin American immigrants? But oh no, we want the Latino vote.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thread of all this is, they hang it all. To me, it figures back into that change fear. They hang it all on, the Democrats are just trying to do all these crooked things so that they can kiss up to voters that'll keep voting for them when we've been losing Latino voters left and right. And also, none of that makes any damn sense, because it wouldn't matter if you froze everything where it is now. The trend is not in their favor. The fear of change is driving so much of it.
The only people, demographically, the only people still voting for the Republican Party are a shrinking portion of evangelical Christians and older white men. That's it.
Yeah. And, the handful of outlying demographics that they can pick up and brainwash along the way.
Venezuelans.
Because remember, my big, one of my big principles is anything we can do to keep these people from fucking reproducing. Shut them out of the gene pool as much as we can.
Well, ironically, just as a slight aside, they did a study on mortality rates, and they found that likely COVID turned the election for Democrats because that many Republicans died of COVID.
Okay with that. I am
as compared to Democrats. It's not quite the same, but it's a very close percentage of this many Republicans died as compared to Democrats. And if you look at the polling in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, you're like, okay, so this many more people who identified as Republicans died in Michigan over Democrats, and Biden won Michigan by this amount.
Oh damn! That is the perfect closer. Rest in peace, Phil Valentine. That is the perfect stinger. I love it. That says it all.
As it might be said, that puts the nail in the coffin. I'm so sorry.
We got jokes. What we don't have is any more time. It's time to go. It's time to retire, surrender to the bottles and cans. But as always, we appreciate you for joining in. Kudos to those that participate and throw in some real hot takes. That was beautiful.
And just throwing in that
standing ovation for that one. That chef's kiss and shit. Anyway, if you know somebody that would dig this, tell them about it. Like the show, like the posts, Repost some shit. Invite some friends. Do all that kind of shit. We're never going to make a living from doing this, but it would be great if we found a way to make the episode pay for itself. That would be a cool little break even. Maybe even give David a little beer money along the way. Who knows?
Or just pay for our equipment.
Yeah, or the gear. Hey, the gear would be cool.
Yeah, the gear.
Yeah, there you go. We do want to be able to go to
because we love it, and we
more.
like talking to you all, and we like sharing it with you all. So that's actually the main thing that we enjoy doing. And yeah, we're going to just keep doing it.
It's a lot of fun. As always, it's wonderful to see everybody. Wonderful to see you, sir. And that'll bring us to the closing of the evening. And David's just topped or bottomed out that last glass. So it's definitely time. With that, good night.
Good evening.
And
And
good luck.
Good luck.